Hello, hello, everybody. I was just talking about how my allergies are messing with me today, right before we go live. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Medical Myths, the show about what not to do with your body. And today, I have a very special guest who I was able to meet in person not too long ago. Really excited to have Godless Engineer here to talk about magnets today. So I'm sure people know who you are already, but would you like to introduce yourself anyway to my audience?
Sure, no problem. So I'm the Godless Engineer. I mainly post on YouTube here, doing videos, response videos about atheism and other like pseudoscientific kinds of things. So if you like content like what Ben's doing here, you can find similar content over there on my channel. Although it's here lately, I've been doing a lot more about like atheism and Christianity and history and stuff of that nature. But I still get into the science of a lot of things. So if you're interested in that, then please come on over and check me out.
Definitely. And Godless Engineer is a way bigger channel than mine. So I'm sure all of you, if you're already here, you've probably been over to GE's channel at least once or twice. But I'm very excited to have somebody like him on today because I took physics a little bit, but I'm not in any of that kind of specialty of science. So it's definitely helpful to bring somebody on who understands more of that side of things. And have you heard of magnet therapy before we started talking about this?
Well, so I had heard of, like, I'd seen the infomercials or whatever that everybody sees of the bracelets that are supposed to improve circulation and all that other kind of stuff. I always kind of just shook it off because I didn't understand, like, even before I took physics, I didn't understand how exactly that would improve circulation. So it always kind of seemed like pseudoscientific nonsense. But ever since starting to dive into more of the pseudoscience that's prevalent out there, I mean, it seems like I totally believe that people believe that this stuff works. But yeah, so there's a little bit of nuance to the whole magnet therapy thing, from what I can tell, because there are some therapies that are used that include magnets, but it's not the magnetism that actually has the beneficial stuff to it, which we'll get into, I guess, here in a little bit. But it's never been the magnetism or doing anything as far as like making your body more magnetic or anything like that that's ever provided any kind of health benefits. So
yeah, so this is a kind of a cringeworthy topic, but it's at the same time it's one that seems so benign. Like, even if magnets don't do anything to help, a lot of people might say, what's the harm in wearing a magnet? And the problem is, we'll see kind of what rhetoric these people are using to try to sell their products, and also some legal actions that have been taken by the FDA against some of these organizations because they make some very, very dangerous claims. So I have a website that I pulled up, and this is kind of the standard magnet therapy bracelet. So this is what people are selling, and this one comes from Magnet RX, which they're usually $100 for a bracelet, but I guess there's a sale right now at $60 for this bracelet with these little magnets all throughout it. And what they're saying is, well, they're also pulling in the copper myth about how the 99.9% pure copper has enhanced healing properties, but that might be a whole separate video about the copper. But what do you think about this right off the bat?
Well, so I have to worry about the health, like the real ramifications of being near like powerful magnets, like constantly. Because I mean, we're around magnets a good portion, of our life, especially now in the modern times. But as far as like magnets that are powerful enough to have the supposed effects that are claimed by these magnet therapy places, I
Mhm.
really don't know what the actual health ramifications are for it, because it kind of seems to me like if you could, it could potentially lead to a lot of health risks, being near
Mhm.
like massive magnetic fields like that. So I don't know, but my initial thing is that it's a bracelet that provides kind of a placebo effect to people, which that's what
Mhm.
I've read. That's what I've been reading on a lot of sites that have taken a critical look at magnet therapy, is that it provides this placebo effect. People just, think that they're, healthier or feeling better or whatnot. And that in itself, that placebo effect, seems to at least make them think that they are doing better. And that kind of what it's always seemed to me is that it's this like, it's a nice little placebo like trinket thing that
Mhm.
people think are helping them, when it really has no effect, because of like it has no effect, because the magnets that are used generally, from what I've seen, are very weak magnets. And
Mhm.
we were talking about how they just don't know how to do math beforehand, which we'll
Mhm.
get into. But they're weak magnets, and these magnets have seemingly no physical effect on the human body. So the only thing, like if there was any kind of benefit to it, it would be the placebo effect, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
But also, you were talking about the rhetoric that they use, which can be dangerous. And I
Mm.
think that is probably the most dangerous thing about the whole magnet therapy deal.
Yeah. So let's look at the features of this magnet therapy bracelet, and you can tell me if you think this is legitimate or if you think that there's some misleading information in these features. So they say that this has 48 powerful rare earth magnets, and there are 3,500 Gauss per magnet, and they're claiming that because of this, it's over 168,000 total Gauss strength. What do you think about that? Do you think that that's actually the magnet strength that you're getting with this bracelet?
No, I don't think so. For one thing, 168,000 total Gauss strength is pretty strong. I know, prior to going live, you were saying that that's stronger than an MRI machine, right?
Mm.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as I can recollect, whenever you're actually going in for an MRI, like, you have to be stripped of all metal, because
Hmm.
the magnets that they use, being as powerful as they are, will can either harm you, depending on where you're keeping a certain metal object, but also can harm the machine, because it pulls everything to it, due to the magnetism. But um, it 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 amazes me that people would believe this, or at least not like question, like, how strong is that? Like, how does that compare to these other things? Because if you're walking around with a bracelet that is stronger than an MRI machine, anytime you pass by anything that could be magnetic, you're not going to be able to like
Yeah.
pull that shit off of there. Like, you're
Yeah.
stuck, like it's stuck to something. So it definitely doesn't work like they're thinking that it works. And typically with magnetic fields, the way that you can see like the actual magnetic field of whatever you're doing, like if you got one of these bracelets, I don't know, maybe you're hate watching us right now, but you can take some like iron filaments, or any kind of magnetic metal that you can get, the like very I think a very common one or is the ferrous material in like the etch a sketches and stuff. Or no, a better one is do you recall those little it's like a little drawing game where it's got some like metal shavings inside of this
Hmm.
little container, and then it's got the face behind it, and then you use a magnet pen, and then you can draw like a beard or something, or hair on
Yeah.
this. I
Yeah.
don't know if you recall that. But I
Yeah.
mean, you could conceivably get one of those or get that material, and then you can put it like on the magnet, like on this bracelet, and then you can see the actual magnetic field, because the way that the magnetic fields work, these filaments are going to align with the magnetic field that it creates. And it simply put, like, there may be a lot of little magnetic fields, right? But it's definitely not like, because they're in close proximity, they're combining and creating a huge magnetic field, right? So it's definitely not working the way that they think. The magnetic fields don't stack upon each other and then create one huge magnetic field. You would need like a huge battery, or not battery, sorry, a huge like single magnetic piece to create bigger and bigger fields. But also there's electromagnetic fields, which can be incredibly strong, and that's when you run an electric current through a piece of magnetic material, a piece of metal, and you can generate a magnetic field that way, and that can be pretty strong depending on how much current you run through it. So I mean, it just simply doesn't work like they're talking about.
Yeah, and I just looked up to confirm that an MRI is at 15,000. So we're talking significantly. They're saying that this is significantly greater powered than an MRI. So
I mean, yeah. Let's see. I can't do the math right off the top of my head, but let's see. 168 divided by 50. Well, let's see. 168 divided by 15. That's just over 11 times more powerful than an MRI machine. Like, I mean, can you just imagine like trying to market it that way, instead of putting up this like the actual gauge strength of what they say
right.
is the gauge strength? Like, you put that up there, it's like it's 11.2 times stronger than any MRI machine. Like,
Like, you're not walking around in public with that. Like, everyone's got something magnetic usually on them. Like, people's belt buckles are going to be attracted to you. Like, all this nonsense. So yeah, so that claim doesn't stand. Then they say all magnets are positioned bio-north, facing the body for deeper penetration. Which, like, they're making it sound like it's a radiation, like they're beaming magnetism into you, which is not at all what you're even trying to do with magnets. So I think the wording there is misleading.
Well, yeah, by bio north, I'm wondering if they're just talking about how the dipoles of the magnets are positioned to where the north end of the dipole is like all, like they're all pointing towards the body. But I mean, for like there's no deeper penetration. Like, as far as magnets go, so the magnetic
Yeah.
field forms around the magnet, and like the amount of penetration uh, is the exact same, like going from north to south or south to north. Of course, I do believe the magnetic field flows from crap. I can't recall right off the top of my head if it flows north. I think it flows south to north is how it flows. I had this up earlier, refreshing my memory on it. All magnetic fields flow in one direction, and so but the important thing is that it's not like the north side like flows like far, like it's not deeper, like there's not more of a magnetic field on the north side than the south side. I mean, it's just a magnetic field, you know.
So this is just really poor application of what magnetism is, and clearly saying that they do not understand what they're talking about. So, I mean,
Right.
basically, we have people selling magnets who know nothing about magnets and are saying that this is going to treat your medical condition. So probably not a good idea to listen to these people, right? Am I wrong there?
Right. No. Don't listen to these people. So I was just looking very specific, so I didn't get it wrong, but it was it flows from north to south, the magnetic field. So
Okay.
I guess what they're talking about is the fact that the magnetic field would be flowing like through your skin instead of I don't know, because it would still, like, regardless if you had the north side pointing towards your body or the south side pointing towards your body, you still have like the magnetic field would still be like, flowing through you. But still, it's not like on either side it's like a deeper magnetic field or something like that.
So the next question, I guess, and we'll let this take us into the next article. Now that we understand kind of what magnet therapy is, and there's different types of magnet therapy. There are these bracelets. There's also, you can get mattresses with these magnets. You can get magnet therapy, which we'll talk about later, where you have two magnets and you oppose them and you try to move stuff in your body or something weird like that. There's a company that does that. But how does this work? What is the mechanism? What are they trying to say that it does? And I found an article that tries to tell us exactly what happens with magnet therapy. And we'll try not to laugh too hard as we read this, but we're gonna be laughing a lot because this article is on the next level of like Deepak Chopra word salad. So we're gonna get into this because I was just very confused reading this article. So I'm gonna zoom in a little bit on this. Actually, I don't like the color of this page either. With the font, it's very
This is
difficult to read.
horrible web design. Now, I mean, I'm a software
Horrible.
engineer, so I'm not exactly a web designer, but I believe that even I could do a better job than this.
So I could probably even zoom in a little bit more on that so the audience can read. Okay, so how magnetic therapy works. Biomagnetism works in the human body through the circulatory system, the nervous system, and the endocrine system. Magnetism is continuously penetrating every known particle right down to the atom. Its ordering effect on living systems arises from the fact that magnetism is a blueprint of life itself. All known energies have as a base this electromagnetic field. The latest research indicates that magnetism has a very significant biological effect on human beings.
What research? Which I remember you talking about how they do cite some research, but
They
from
do.
what I can tell of the stuff that I pulled up from legit like people with degrees, magnetism has no direct benefits. What I did find was that there are some therapies uh, that are meant to help very specific ailments, and what it was it's like a pulsing magnetic field, create and that pulsing magnetic field will create an electrical charge, or an electrical current, and that current is actually what stimulates things. It's not the magnetism itself; it's the electric current that is created by the pulsating electromagnet, I guess. That's one therapy that I found, but again, they were very specific about how that is not magnetism doing it. Like magnetism has nothing to do with it. It's all about the generation of that electrical current. And I don't know what it means to be a blueprint for life. Like, I don't like
What do you
magnetism.
think
I
about
don't understand.
the fact that
Sorry, go ahead.
oh yeah, sorry, I think my internet bugged a little bit. But the magnetism as a blueprint of life. I was just gonna ask you about that. Like, I'm very confused about what this means.
Yeah, I'm not sure because I don't know if they mean like how magnetism works on an atomic scale as being a blueprint for life, or like the actual the actual magnetic fields being a blueprint for life, because that's definitely not like a blueprint for life. I feel like it's way too vague to make any kind of a single statement on what they could possibly mean. I just think that it's word salad.
Yeah, and once again, we have this magnetism and penetration being mentioned as if magnets operate by that. But something that I think that they confuse, and I don't know if this is them not understanding or if they are intentionally misusing words that they know the general public isn't going to pick up on. But this concept of magnetism, and we know that like everything has some level of magnetism just based on, you know, electrons. But the problem is, like, people often in these articles, they'll confuse something being diamagnetic and then applying that to then saying that this is paramagnetic. So while, yeah, hemoglobin and blood cells are diamagnetic, but literally everything is diamagnetic. It's not going to, you can't apply that and say, yeah, well, your blood cells are magnetic, and so they're going to respond to this magnet therapy bracelet. It's misusing the those words and making people think that because it's got magnet in its general properties, then it's going to be this other type of magnetism.
Well, and the reason why, which they mentioned in the third paragraph there, for blood being, I guess, weakly magnetic, is because of the iron that is in our hemoglobin, which helps in the transport of oxygen. But the thing is that in order to have the desired effect that they claim, you would have to have a much stronger magnet than they provide. So you would, I don't understand. Like, there's a lot of things I don't understand in this article, which I'm sure that we'll get to. But I definitely do think that they use a lot of very hyper specific language that most people are not really going to be able to understand. And because they're using hyper specific language, people automatically think they know what they're talking about when this entire web page has no idea what it's fucking trying to say. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll read through this next couple paragraphs because they kind of go together. So Dr. H.L. Bonsall points out that magnetism increases the electrical conductivity of the blood. Weak current runs through the blood, and the quantities of ions are increased. The newly ionized blood circulating throughout the body can significantly contribute to the efficiency of the blood flow, as well as having a stabilizing effect on both high and low blood pressure. Blood contains ferrous hemoglobin that functions as a carrier of oxygen and carbon dioxide. As the blood circulates in the lungs, fully magnetized ferrous hemoglobin is able to transport more oxygen to cell tissue, as well as taking more carbon dioxide waste from the cell back to the lungs for removal. There's a lot of problems with what was just said here, and they have this little diagram as well. Which this is absolutely not how this works. And like when we're talking about oxygen and like hemoglobin binding affinity is for oxygen and carbon dioxide, like yes, you have iron, and yes, there are some magnetic properties, but in order to improve the binding affinity, they're kind of phrasing it as if you magnetize this iron and it's going to grab more oxygen to take to the tissues. But hemoglobin has binding sites for oxygen. Like, are you going to add more binding sites by magnetizing it? No, you're not. You might be able to. Like, there's a question then: could we study how it impacts binding affinity? Like, so if it's more likely to be bound or not bound, like that's a different question, because that could be a more feasible mechanism for this, but you're not going to increase the amount of oxygen that you can bind simply by magnetizing it. What are your thoughts on these paragraphs in this diagram?
Yeah, so it's I was confused when I read this, and so I actually had I went and I looked up, like, how does oxygen, like, how is it carried by blood and everything. And from what I read, it's a mixture of the ferrous material, the iron and hemoglobin, um, attaching, I guess, to the oxygen attaching to it, but also the oxygen physically dissolves in the blood and the hemoglobin and everything. Stop me if I'm saying something wrong, because this is definitely out of my realm of expertise specifically. But it seems to me like you can only have, like, before knowing what you had just said, it would seem to me like you can only dissolve or have so much oxygen that's carried by the blood just by like a physical limitation. And to say that if you magnetize your blood, like your hemoglobin, then it can carry more oxygen. I I immediately had to press X to doubt on that, and it's a good thing, because the resource that I found stated that, like, well, this much oxygen will dissolve and be carried by human blood as just a matter of physics. Like, this is how much is dissolved in or is carried by blood in general. And so I was like, well, shit, that kind of fucks up that idea. But I mean, if you think about it, and you would probably know this more than I, and I mean, I was gonna look it up, but I didn't have time to. Is there not, like, a serious issue with super oxygenating your blood?
Oh, there's definitely a problem there. Yeah, and I did a whole medical myths on oxygen therapies, and specifically oxygen bars, and how supplemental oxygen is not a benign drug. So yeah, you do get problems, especially with free radical oxidization of tissues. That, yeah, you don't want to be doing something like that. So yeah, I don't see this mechanism as working, number one, and number two, if it did, it would be more problematic.
Also, I have to laugh at his diagram for how blood flows in vessels.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
It's
I'm
so
not,
funny.
I'm not, obviously I'm not a medical person, but blood cells don't line up like in a perfect line in your veins in order to, like, when it flows, like, it doesn't do that. And it says that when there's no magnetic field, there's that, and then when there is a magnetic
Yeah.
field, apparently they separate or something. And that's just, also, if you'll notice, like, it has the little flow. I'm pointing on my screen, I know y'all can't see, but on the little magnetic field portion on the right side, it has them kind of, I guess, separated but still in a nice line. And then over here on the left hand side of the blood flow, you have them all nice and organized, and of course separated. And then it's just like a jumbled mess over on the left hand side. I have no fucking idea how, like, them being lined up and spaced out is better, like, as far as transporting blood through your veins or capillaries or whatever. Like, I have no idea if there's any kind of benefit whatsoever between the two ways that they could flow. It's perfectly unreasonable to suggest that they would flow in a nice ordered pattern, like they're trying to show here. But I don't see how there could be a benefit to the blood cells flowing like that.
Yeah, and there is a phenomenon where blood can stack up like that, but it's incredibly problematic. It's called the rouleau formation, and you see this in cases where people have abnormal amounts of, like, fibrinogen or immunoglobulins, where oftentimes you're going to have cancer or some autoimmune disease that would cause this, and you can get blood obstruction from stuff like this. It's not a good thing to have. It's not normal. So yeah, blood does not move. Have blood flowing like this, you have bigger problems that we need to worry about.
Yeah, and I
So
mean, I
the
wonder.
next, yeah,
Oh, Well, I
Go
was
for
just
it.
thinking, like, because my mind constantly asked questions about this, like, what if the blood did flow, like they're saying the magnetized blood flows? I wonder how that would affect blood flow through, like, you know, uh, what builds up in the arteries? Cholesterol? Is it,
Yeah.
it's a type of cholesterol that builds up. Like, I wonder
Hmm.
how, like, if it would restrict it more in its flow, if you have, like, you know uh like a part of your vein or capillary where part of it's a little obstructed by, like, high cholesterol, um or cholesterol buildup or whatever. Like,
Hmm.
I think that the way that the magnetized thing would flow, I think that you would end up having a lot more obstructions. That's just my non-expert, like,
Oh
wild-haired
yeah.
idea about problems that would occur.
Well, yeah, you essentially give yourself like a sickle cell crisis. Like one of the ways that sickle cell disease is so dangerous is because when the cells sickle and they block blood vessels, you get ischemia downstream. So you get people with chest
Mhm.
pains, you get respiratory difficulties, you get people like sickle cell patients often lose their spleen. They have an autosplenectomy where their body just like it blocks off blood flow to the spleen. So we
Mhm.
have examples of cases where um, blood flow like this causes problems, and this is essentially what would happen. You'd get basically the consequences of sickle cell without even necessarily having sickle cell. So yeah,
Uh-huh.
this is absolutely not what should be happening. And I'm glad that these bracelets don't cause your blood to move like that because I'd be I'd be worried. I'd be really worried. People would be hospitalized from these.
Yeah, definitely.
So the next paragraph, talking about biomagnetism again. Biomagnetism works to regulate and normalize hormone secretion in the glands. It is currently believed that the increased electrical current being produced forms like a net around the glands and secretory ducts. An extra concentration of oxygen stimulates production, while the electrical net regulates optimum secretion. As a result, conditions caused by a lack of hormone secretion or a hormone imbalance are affected through normalizing the hormone functions within the body. Hormones play a very important role in rejuvenation and in general energy levels, while proper circulation ensures that the hormone level is evenly distributed to all parts of the body. And I'm not going to talk a whole lot about this paragraph because, like, in all honesty, it's just word salad. There's nothing of substance here in this paragraph.
Well, right. The one thing that I want to mention is that the bracelet does not induce, like, an electrical current like they're describing here. Now, like, when I mentioned before about how the pulsating magnetic field creates an electrical current that helps in some therapies. These are static, like, magnets. Like, these are magnets that are just they like they have a constant magnetic field. It's not like the magnetic field pulses or anything like that. For that, you would need something like an electromagnet in order to do that. Um, so these static magnets are not going to create an electrical field or electrical current.
Mhm,
Sorry. And
mhm.
so there's no way that any of this can be true. I mean, obviously, I don't know about the hormones and all that kind of stuff. But I seriously have to press X to doubt on just every single word in this. And I mean, while I'm not an expert in it, I can at least spot bullshit from, like, a mile away, and that's what I'm spotting here is a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, their comments about the hormones is just absolute garbage. These big words to make you think they understand what they're saying. They've said nothing of
Right.
substance in all that talk about hormones. Like, and the way that they're so vague with how they word things, like they're not making like any actual claims because the things that they've said are useless. So it's like they
Mhm.
sound like they're saying something smart, but really, like, and this is why it's so hard sometimes to debunk some of these more out their articles, because like on the one hand it's very easy to laugh at the fact that they say nothing and just spew word salad, but like how do you really debunk something that's not saying anything? It's very difficult to address something of such little substance.
Well, I think that
But
pointing out that, that what they're saying has very little substance, or that how any of it how none of it makes any kind of sense. I mean, I think that's about the only thing that you can say, but I still think that that's
mhm,
important to do, because I
mhm,
mean, how like for anybody that's not, you know, that doesn't know a lot about magnetism or physics or anything like that, wouldn't know, that the bracelet doesn't cause an increased electrical current. Like they're like, oh, it does, and so they won't understand that it would take um when's that sexy bro Cephas guy
comment for you.
um they're not going to understand like what it means for a magnet to generate like an electrical current, like I was talking about before. Like they won't understand like the physics of all that. And so I think that's why probably some people find it convincing, is just that the word salad sounds smart, and so they just automatically take whatever they're reading to be true. But it's important for people to point out how it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so the next part I'm definitely going to let you address. When magnetic flux, the north south flow of a magnet, passes through tissue, a secondary current is created around the flux lines of the tissue cells. This ionizes the protoplasm and rejuvenates the tissues by activating cell metabolism. The function of the cell becomes strengthened as the cell metabolism responds to the bioelectrical currents initiated by the magnetic flux. This current induces muscle spasms to decrease, and the activated cell metabolism lowers inflammation in the tissue. The increase of cellular metabolism aids in the regeneration as well as in new cell growth. And right away, I just want to point out that, like, activating cell metabolism, like, what are they claiming? Like, what do they think metabolism is? Like, by activating cell metabolism, are you increasing activity of like PFK, or are you stimulating GLUT4 receptors to upregulate? Like what does this mean to activate cell metabolism? It's just such a vague thing that they said. But what do you think about their use of the word flux and their understanding of flux?
I mean, it suffers from the same problem as the previous paragraph, because they think that a static magnet that just sits there creates an electrical current, and that's not how electromagnetism works. Well, that's not how anything works. Like if you were to create an electrical current with a pulsating magnet, that would work. That would cause like an electrical current to flow. Um, but what they're talking, I mean, in general, with these magnet therapies, we're not talking about a pulsating magnetic field. We're talking about
Mm-hmm.
static magnets, like we looked at before. Those are not going to cause like an electrical current to, um, I guess, flow. I mean, there's going to be a constant flux, of course, surrounding the magnet, but like that doesn't, it's not like the I'm trying to think about the best way to explain it. It's not like there's like a constant stream of like magnetic particles or something like that, that are flowing around the magnet, and that causes an electrical current. I mean, the magnetic field is just, it's there. It flows from north to south, sure, but it doesn't flow in a way that would create an electrical current. And so when
Mm-hmm.
they say shit like a secondary current is created, like I have no idea what a secondary current would be in the human body, let alone how a static magnet would do that. Also, the whole ionizing the protoplasm and
I'm so
rejuvenating
confused
tissues.
there.
I don't know what that means. Because the
I
magnets
mean,
themselves are not going to like ionize. They're not going to ionize like the iron in your blood, because of how weak the magnets are. I mean, we discussed before how, they get a really messed up sense of how that works, but the magnets that are generally used in these magnet therapies on these bracelets and stuff are far too weak to actually have any substantial effect on the iron in your blood and everything. So it's not going to ionize shit. So that I feel like that's just a blatant lie right there. And then I don't know how cell metabolism would respond to bioelectrical currents. Like maybe that's just out of my realm of expertise, but I don't know how, like, what the connection between cell metabolism and
I'm sure you could stop cell metabolism with a high enough current, but that's a whole different issue. Like if you can mess with the proton gradients and that kind of thing, like sure, but that's not what they're claiming here. So
right.
it's just
also, if you have muscle spasms that to the point where you're buying magnets off the internet, just go see a doctor. Like
you need a physical therapist at that point, and yeah, like just the interesting wording here of induces muscle spasms to decrease is such a weird long way to say inhibits muscle spasms, because like if you're inducing, like inducing implies that you're causing an activity to happen, and a muscle spasm is overactivity. So but if you're inducing an activity to decrease, that's just really odd wording. You could just say inhibit muscle spasms.
I mean, is I don't know if you know this, but is like applying an electrical current to like a maybe like a I don't know if a Charlie horse is like a muscle spasm.
That would sound like it would make it worse.
I mean, you would think, because I mean, like applying, like if you think about whenever you apply like an electrical current to a human body, I mean that your muscles are made to contract, or not made, but they're like they contract. Like whenever you move your arm, if I'm not mistaken, when you move your arm, that's like one muscle contracting and another muscle being like pulled, or it's not pulling, but it's being like it's not contracting. And so it's like contracting is the one thing that your muscles do, and if you apply an electrical current to it, then that's going to cause your muscle to contract, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's what I would expect. I would expect you to get rhabdo if you gave somebody that much electrical current. Like if we're talking current to an extent that they're trying to do here, you probably get rhabdo. That's my prediction. I mean, we can test this, but I mean, I don't want to just give a bunch of people rhabdo from like electrical currents, but that's my prediction of what would happen.
Right.
So then they start making claims about the nerve cells. They say the negative pole energy is of this sounds like Deepak Chopra wrote this. The negative pole energies of magnetism interfere with the nerve cell's ability to send pain in their center, which has positive response. The outside switches to potassium with the positive bioelectric charge. Through attraction, the negative pole of a magnet creates a blend of the potassium's positive bioelectric charge as the natural flow of current is towards the negative pole. They're like the switch to potassium. Like there's mechanisms of influx and efflux for potassium and sodium. And this is not only common in nerve cells, but in like every cell in your body has these sodium potassium pump mechanisms, and that ion gradient is common in every system in the body. So it's just like this is an oversimplification of the point of being incorrect with this mechanism.
Yeah, I feel like all of, like you said at the very start, this sounds very Deepak Chopra. I mean, it starts out negative pole energies of magnetism, and it ends with the bioelectric charge of the natural flow of current towards the negative pole. Again, there's no flow of current here as far as magnetism is concerned. So yeah, it I don't know. I don't know what else to say about this particular paragraph.
Yeah.
it
Yeah,
seems to be saying nothing like all the rest of the shit.
yeah. And the next paragraph is kind of just more word salad about like people using biomagnetics. So they have next to just a bunch of quotes of people who support this magnet therapy. I don't want to read all of these because it's just a lot of reading that I don't think is worth our
Oh,
time. Um,
right. Well, I did want to say that when we first started looking at the article, I did look up to see who Dr. H.L. Bansal was.
oh yeah,
And
yeah.
it seems like he's the only thing he does is magnet therapy, or what he calls
Hmm.
magnetotherapy. I mean,
Hmm.
honestly, that it sounds like, a power that Magneto has, where apparently he uses his powers to, heal people maybe. But anyways, he does magnetotherapy and he just writes books about it. And he claims to
Hmm.
be a doctor, but I can't find any actual like
Evidence that he is one.
credentials
I
about.
couldn't either.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like this guy just claims to be a doctor, and he's like a Kent Hovind doctor or something. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. So we start getting into the more dubious side of this because, I mean, the above mechanisms are just funny to laugh at. But when you start looking at these quotes of people who are supposedly clinicians and scientists who have discovered this magnet therapy, you have this one guy who wrote a book on cancer, the magnetic slash oxygen answer. So we have people here that are trying to claim to treat cancer and degenerative diseases, acidosis, with this magnet therapy. So people are making claims, they are selling this to people who need real medicine. And this is why I care so much to talk about it. This is not benign. None of this is benign.
Hmm. So, I was looking at one of the people that showed up on the screen there, which was Dr. Robert Becker, and he's done a lot. He
Yeah,
claims to
this
be a
guy, this guy.
researcher.
Hmm.
Yes. He claims to be a researcher in electrophysiology and electromedicine. Um, and apparently he was part of leading the early opposition to high voltage power lines. And
Oh my God.
he's been named one of the most influential figures in the area of anti EMF activism, which EMF would be electromagnetic fields. And I looked up, um, and they've done studies on whether or not like high voltage power lines are linked to like cancer and other things. Um, and it says that there's zero, or there's no consistent evidence for an association between any source of non-ionizing EMF and cancer. Um,
Yeah. And it's
so
funny too, because if he's claiming to be an electrophysiologist, like I don't know if he's trying to did you find his like actual credentials? Like is he a
uh,
physician?
well, he died
He
in
was.
2008.
Okay.
And he worked, he was an orthopedic surgeon who worked at an upstate medical center in the State University of New York, Syracuse. And he was the director of orthopedic surgery at the Veterans Administration Hospital in Syracuse, New York. I found him on Wikipedia. This is just what Wikipedia is saying about him.
So that's
But
interesting that so if he was an orthopedic surgeon, then he was not an electrophysiologist because electrophysiology is a branch of cardiology. Like it's a branch of like they do procedures on pacemakers and all that stuff. So like he's
mhm.
claiming to be a very uh high up expert in cardiology by saying that. And he might not be meaning that, but I mean I would expect an orthopedic surgeon to understand what an electrophysiologist is. So that's scary to me.
Yeah.
And also, thank you for the super chat, Native Atheist. We really appreciate you joining us here. I pulled up the next section talking about the research on this magnet therapy because I did want to address this. So these
Okay.
are the kind of 3 studies that people will cite to say that this magnet therapy works, but there are many problems with the studies. If you read the studies, namely this one from the Baylor College of Medicine, this was a very preliminary study, and the people who even performed this study said that more work should be done. This was in no way trying to give a causal explanation or a causal relationship. It was just meant to provide preliminary data. So the problems here with this study, it was supposedly a randomized clinical trial, but it was not really good randomization. They had the more women compared to men in the experimental group, and it was about twice the number of the control group. So if there happened to be some physiological difference, that might have played some kind of role. You have variables that were not appropriately controlled for. And then something else, the age of the placebo group was 4 years higher on average than the control group. So if you have people who are older and have other comorbidities, or they're just less likely to respond to a therapy, it might not be the therapy itself. It might be that your age group of your patients differed enough to cause that variable to confound your data. Another point with that, there was no follow-up of these patients. So they had one exposure to the magnet therapy, and then they were never seen again. So yeah, if you show up and you get the magnet put on, you're like, yeah, okay, I feel better for a little bit, and then you never follow up. How do we know if it actually worked? So many problems with this Baylor study. Even though it comes from a college of medicine, that does not mean that it can be taken just as it is and be extrapolated to other contexts, because this is not a reliable study.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you've done far more looking into these studies than I have, but I would think that if you only see the person, or you give them one magnet treatment and then take their immediate reaction afterwards, I feel like there's going to be a lot of like clouding of the data. Like,
Yeah. Oh, and also, it wasn't just for arthritis pain. It was specifically for symptoms of like knee pain in people who had polio as kids. So this is a very specific population that's not, you can't really extrapolate that data elsewhere, because this might not just be your standard osteoarthritis. Like, we have people who had symptomatic polio as kids, which is going to be a whole other layer of variables. And Titan says that he's a homeopathic Reiki electromagnet chakraologist. Good for you, Titan. that's our new titles here. I am officially giving GE an honorary degree in homeopathic Reiki electromagnet chakraology. Congrats.
I gotta open up that 5th chakra down there.
Yeah.
That's what I need to do.
Well, you know what you need is some magnet penetration. That's the only thing that's going to help you.
Yeah.
And then the next study for the diabetic foot pain, there are some problems with this one as well. This study had very poor data, simply because, like, the way that they did this, their stats were done by ANOVA. So they were put in like, it's a categorical approach and not like a continuous, like, numerical, like, linear approach. So you have this, you essentially give people the magnet therapy, and then you ask them, how did you feel afterwards? And you put them in like 4 different categories of like no improvement, mild improvement, like some improvement, like good I don't remember the exact categories that they had, but you have these categories that you put people in. And so there's not a range or a spectrum of possibilities. You only have 4 possibilities for your results. So let's say you had people who ranked themselves in the significant improvement box. Then, and you compared that to the people in the no improvement box. Sure, you might have more people in the significant improvement, but did you account for a spectrum of responses? You didn't, because everything within a certain criteria was, yes, this is significant improvement. And that makes it very problematic and biased when you're looking at the data.
Well, I'm also wondering like what kind of like actual insoles that they use. Like, if the person was not used to having like super cushiony insoles, if they swap them out, then I mean it could just be a general like, yeah, these feel a lot better than like, you know, the sandals I was wearing or something like that. I don't know the study, so I don't know how they might have accounted for those kinds of variables, but that would be the first place that I went to. Is like, well, I mean, maybe the insoles themselves were just comfortable and it caused them to feel better. Like, you know,
Yeah,
I would think that you would need to control for that.
I think they did give like a sham insole to the placebo group, but if you think about it, if you're putting magnets in one of these insoles and not in another, even just the structural changes of the insole might change. If someone's feet prefer a more firm insole with a magnet, then that might have contributed as well. So yeah, I don't know how they attempted to control for these variables, but we already see that there's a lot of bias introduced into that study. So while this is one that's being cited quite frequently, it's a weak study and very weak evidence for their claim. And the last study, I don't know much about the last study. I'd have to look more into that one. Oh, that's one about the magnets and fibromyalgia, and I don't know much about that one, but I could definitely look into that later. I'm guessing that it's similar to the other ones in the level of bias, but I don't want to make claims that I don't know. So,
well, I don't know. So, like at the very end, it says no adverse reactions were noted during the 16-week trial period. Like,
so essentially, I mean, yeah, you slept on a mattress. Good. So we got no adverse reactions, but did we get improvement? Like, that's the question here.
Yeah.
So, and then of course they have their these magnetic products are not sold as medical devices, despite this whole article about why these are used as medical devices. But this is not meant to cure diseases. There's no guarantee of effectiveness, and it's not intended to replace anything prescribed by your doctor. So yeah, at least I'm going to give them credit for telling people to not use them with a pacemaker or defibrillator, but they should put that way up at the top and not at the bottom when no one's going to read it.
Yeah. Keep magnets away from computer disks, videotapes, video monitors, credit cards, and any other magnetic media, especially if you're wearing 11 MRIs on your wrist.
Yeah. Which is wearing 11. I should make some merch that's like wearing a bracelet of 11 MRI little things. Like this bracelet has 11 MRIs on it. That's gonna be a meme. I feel like that's gonna be a meme now for us. There's another. I wanted to show, like, for the last little bit, this other website, because this one really gets into some dangerous claims. We won't go through this website in detail, but there's a reason why I wanted to bring this one up to everyone's attention. Because so this one is Durazo Medical Biomagnetism. So this is a whole website about these DIY at-home biomagnetic kits. So you have, I think you get 2 of these like ceramic magnets, and I tried to figure out how you use them, but they're going to make me take a class to figure that out, and I don't want to give them money for a class. But this guy, he's not a doctor. He's not a scientist. He has like an
hold on. Scroll back
yeah.
up.
It's like
That
on
picture right there.
yeah. It's like on her face. Yeah.
Okay, I know this. They got dangerous shit on this, so I don't want to laugh too much. But can you just
Yeah.
imagine? It's like, now place the magnet next to your nostril. Do you
Yeah.
feel the healing energy of the magnetism?
Yeah. I wonder, like, maybe we should do a I should react to taking one of these courses. You know what? For the Patreon after shows sometime, I should do one of these courses and subject my patrons to this nonsense. um, yeah, so you have this guy who where his credentials were somewhere, but he sells this biomagnetic DIY home care kit. He sells supplements. He sells a Beamer device, which I think that's the one for one of them for fibromyalgia, which there's no evidence of this. And I have the FDA thing that I'll share. But he sells books, he sells classes. He has like all of this. Oh, that's the guy who there's a doctor who like started this practice. There are multiple doctors that supposedly discovered biomagnetism, and all of them are taking credit for it. And I don't know which one came first. But this looks okay. Like this website looks like something that people would be into. Looks like it wouldn't be too harmful until you look at some of the there's a letter from the FDA sent to this organization, and this is really scary. So this is a warning letter sent to this biomagnetism therapy company at savememagnets.com, which is now that other site. So it says the FDA has observed that your websites offer biomagnetism magnetic therapy DIY kits, which include sets of ceramic grade magnets. Here, I could probably zoom this in. Or I can't because I have something that popped up. Anyway, which includes sets of ceramic grade magnets encased in plastic and washers to hold the magnets in place over clothing for sale in the United States. Based on our review, the biomagnetism magnetic therapy DIY kits are intended for use in the mitigation, prevention, treatment, diagnosis, or cure of COVID-19 in people, and thus are devices under that section. Though our review of your websites revealed statements that establish biomagnetism magnetic therapy DIY kits are intended for that, and some of them include worried about coronavirus, biomagnetic solutions exist. An image of a man holding your product with the text pandemic weapon of choice. 2 quick start kits. If you happen to get coronavirus or any other infection, you will need these tools and instructions. So this is dangerous. This is what these people are doing.
Yeah. That's real shitty right there.
So the fact that the FDA has cracked down on some of these people for their very explicit medical claims saying that, and this was in 2020 when this was released. So back when, I mean, people are still dying of COVID. There's no question about that. But especially to release this during like the height of mortality with a certain viral disease, and you're going to market your stupid magnet therapy and tell people that this is going to cure them. And when people are already paranoid, already not trusting legitimate medical science, and then you're selling this product and selling it in this specific way. So they have a video titled How to Scan for the C virus using the magnets. Scanning for coronavirus shows a person placing your firm's product on the body of another person while a speaker states, so the way biomagnetically we do this, which is to place a negative field of magnet to the body part where we scan for the virus. Now put the magnet. Whoa, what the? Put the magnet on the
Yeah.
urethra. The leg becomes shorter than the other, so this would tell us that she's carrying the virus. This sounds like not something that could be real. Like that, this magnet company would be like, yeah, just put this magnet on your urethra, and your leg's gonna shrink, and that's how we know you have COVID.
Just listen, I feel like this entire thing like needs somebody like Brocephus to sell it, because it's like, all right, now listen, you want to take the magnet and you want to put it on your dick, okay, or your whatever you got, put it on there, and then if your leg shortens, then you got the virus. What? put this magnet on your urethra. And if something else happens, then you definitely got it. You feel a tingle.
Like, I'm just so confused, number one, about how this would happen, and number two, how this tests for COVID of all things, and also, how does putting a magnet on your dick cause your leg to shrink?
I don't know.
I feel like this almost makes me think that this is just like some prank that some like a very terrible prank. Like, there's no tact if someone were to prank somebody like this, but it sounds like a prank if someone be like, yeah, if you just like do this, like it'd be funny to watch someone put a magnet on their dick.
I can see this guy got drunk and is like, look, I can get people to put magnets on their genitals. You just watch.
See, this is a good point. So now I know I have a virus. What do I do about my shrunken leg? Yeah, I don't know.
I kind of feel like maybe you should get like I don't know, a cane or something, because if you got one leg shorter than the other, you don't want to like does your leg shrink even more when you put the magnet back on your genitals and you test it, like to test again to see if you're free of the COVID virus? Like what if you test so much that your leg shrinks and disappears? Like what happens then?
See, now I'm just imagining people going to the emergency department with these short legs, and just like doctor walks in the room like, oh yeah, definitely COVID because your leg's shorter than the other one. Like, and you just have this whole hospital full of people with like short one legs because of this magnet test.
Yeah, this randomly short legs. It's like, y'all tested for COVID, didn't you?
Y'all use the magnet test.
Your legs. This definitely does reek of like the whole faith healing thing, because that's one thing that faith healers will do is they'll claim that they can like make one leg the same length as the other because you got a shorter leg or something. Yeah. When really it's just them messing with your shoe.
And you can actually do that too, like with, because human beings are not perfectly symmetrical, and especially with just everyday movement, you get some muscle imbalances. Certain muscles that work harder might be more contracted than other ones, and you can, with the mechanics of the pelvis and the knee and all that, like if you have certain muscle strain or certain muscle patterns, you can have like some asymmetry in your legs, and that's just known to be a thing that people have. And you can often correct that with, like, if it's really bothering you, you can correct it with like physical therapy and stretching. It's like it's not an anatomical short leg, but it's like a physiological short leg that you can just relax the muscle a little bit and make that not an issue. But I mean, really, the people that are dealing with that are people with scoliosis, like the most. But it's like, yeah, you can mess with symmetry of someone's legs and it not be indicative of faith healing or magnet healing or whatever. But it's just so funny, like the lengths that people will go to be convinced of the supernatural is incredible. And the fact that they have these videos in Spanish as well, they were trying to be international with their marketing of these products for COVID.
Yeah. I imagine it's probably easier to sell it in some other places in other countries.
Oh man, okay, look at this. On June 6, 2020, FDA sent an email to your firm requesting basic information regarding the devices offered for sale on your websites, including your firm's contact info and description of your product's technology and intended use. On June 9th, 2020, your firm responded but did not provide the requested information. Rather, you argued in your response that your products are not subject to FDA regulation because your firm is a private membership association that only deals with private members within a First and 14th Amendment private membership association in the private domain.
Your argument is without merit.
Yeah, this is hilarious. Like, yeah, we're not subject to regulation by the FDA because, like, this has very like MAGA vibes to it.
Oh,
With
definitely.
Like even maybe some soft sit vibes too.
I mean, the thing that always in these cases, the one thing I'm always reminded of is Michael Scott standing in the middle of the office saying, "I declare bankruptcy," and because it sounds like they're just like, "I declare that we are not governed by you."
Yeah, pretty much. Like it sounds like something the soft sits would do. Just like, yeah, well, I'm not under your laws, but actually, you are, and you might be killing people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's much else in here to address. But what are your thoughts just on like this whole situation, and especially with COVID? Do you think that, I mean, I know your answer to this already, but do you think that these people, have good intentions? Do you think that they are actually benign and that's just whatever, wearing a
They're
stupid
definitely
bracelet?
not benign. And I think that they have deluded themselves into thinking that it works, but at the
Mhm.
same time, I feel like that's why third parties like the FDA, need to be involved because, it's like, okay, you think that this prevents it, but it doesn't actually. It reminds me a lot of like the preachers and everything saying that you don't need the COVID-19 vaccine or you don't need to socially distance because you're protected by the blood of Christ. And it's like, okay,
Mhm.
that's fine that you believe that, but quit telling other people to forego reasonable measures to prevent the transmission of COVID-19 just because you think the blood of a dead Jew from the first century is protecting you. It's kind of the same situation here. I get that, they think that it works, but it doesn't actually work, and what they're doing is harming other people. So, um, I think the magnet therapies themselves are not necessarily harmful. I think that if anything, they would provide like a placebo effect for somebody. So like, if you wanted to sleep on a mattress, with magnets in it, I don't know if it'll actually do a lot of harm to you. Or if you want to wear a bracelet that has magnets, I don't think that it'll do significant, anything significant to you. But it's definitely not providing the same benefits that are claimed by people. I think that the most harmful stuff of the magnet therapy situation is stuff that we just now covered with like COVID-19 or very specific claims of magnet therapies. Like for instance, that Dr. DH Basil or whatever. He has a book that claims that magnet therapies can cure common diseases. That's like that kind of information is harmful, and it can be very detrimental to the health and well-being of people. So I think that it's the misinformation about magnet therapy and not necessarily the magnet therapy itself that is the problem here. It's definitely, but for me at least, it's boiling down to the misinformation, which apparently my camera just decided to quit. Hold
on. So there's also, while you're figuring that out, that this guy writes all these books about biomagnetism, and he's very like anti-Fauci, very anti-government, very like the stuff on this website is pretty hilarious. Like he has a book, How to Cure with Alternative Medicine Without Government Interference. So like how to use alternative medicine without getting caught, essentially. And he has like a whole page about the pandemic, and he has links to very uncredible people, such as like a link to a GoFundMe for Dr. Paul, who's a pediatrician who had his license suspended for his weird vaccine schedule. And like, so these very anti-science people that they're supporting, of course, I mean, this is alternative therapy, but he has a must-read book on the real Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, Big Pharma, and the global war on democracy and public health. So this guy is a conspiracy theorist, and you can kind of tell from his website.
It definitely it definitely had a lot of that kind of energy like about it.
Yeah. So I guess we can kind of wrap up. This was a lot of weird magnet, Deepak Chopra, weird stuff. So what takeaways? Yeah, I mean, that's the best way I can describe it. I could just describe it with word salad, and that'd be pretty appropriate.
Yeah.
But what are some takeaways from today's episode? Like, did we learn anything? Are we convinced about magnet therapy? Are you going to pay $100 or $60 for this sale? Are you going to buy a magnet bracelet?
I mean, no. I mean, I don't need a bracelet. Like, I've got a watch. Like, that's what I've got, and that's the only thing. But is
your watch the equivalent of 11 MRIs?
No, my watch is not the equivalent of 11 MRIs. But it does tell me when my heart rate gets into the workout zone, which is what I mainly use it for.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, I mean, it's a Fitbit, so like I don't know. I don't use it to count steps. I just use it for like heart rate shit. But no, definitely not. I feel like if anybody has enough magnetic power to surpass 11 MRIs, I don't think that people need to have like personal, like private citizens don't need to have that. I don't know what you would need to use that for, but it's definitely nothing around the house. Also, if I were to have that, there's no way I'd be able to be around any of my computer equipment. You couldn't be around like computer equipment in general. If somebody had that much power on their wrist, not only would you see them, like, I guess, immediately attracting all magnetic material around them, but you would also have them disrupting like computer systems everywhere. But in any case, I don't think that we learned. The only thing that we learned here today was just that magnetotherapies exist. People think that they work, and some of them are. Some people are pushing a lot of dangerous misinformation concerning it, and I'm just glad that others are calling them out and stopping them from pushing that. But there are still plenty of people out there that are saying as crazy shit. Like the one that gets me is reflexology. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, we did an episode about that a while back.
Yeah, it really boggles my mind how they're like, if you take this percussion massager and you get it on this point right here in your foot, that'll cure cancer. And it's like, no, it won't. What are you talking about? Like, my foot feels great because you massaged it, but that it's not doing anything for like my pancreas and my diabetes. Like, you can't heal it just like all of those kinds of medical misinformation that gets pushed around like that. I don't know. I'm immediately highly skeptical of it because, like, I mean, maybe this is a wrong way to think about it, but if these things were to actually work, I feel like you would have a lot more legitimate avenues for obtaining them, and also doctors would be prescribing, these kinds
Oh,
of things
definitely.
if they
Yeah,
actually worked. And if you've got to present your solution as a medical alternative or some kind of alternative to modern medicine or something like that, I feel like you're already shooting yourself in the foot, because then
exactly.
you're admitting that it's not medicine. Like it's not
Hmm.
like anything that's medically sound, and so you're having to push it
Yeah.
outside of the medical community. So
Yeah, like if this therapy were to work, and there is work still being done about magnets, but those are not static magnets. They're actual electromagnets, I believe, for trying it for things like depression and
yeah,
certain spinal injuries. But like those are not being marketed as alternative medicine. They get their research and they go to the doctors and the medical boards and they say, "Hey, here's my data. This works." And it's not alternative. It's just this is a part of medicine. Once you convince us that it has any utility in our field. So, like, if any of these people came up with actual data, it would probably be welcomed into medicine as it is. So,
hmm
yeah, there's no reason for alternative medicine to exist because if it works, it's medicine.
yeah.
So,
Also, I'll say that from what I read up on the current, like, electromagnetic therapies and stuff, is that it's more about the electrical current that's produced and not the actual
mhm,
magnetism. And
yeah,
so that's the big difference between, because the magnet therapies, they all focus on the magnetism portion, like it's the
yep,
magnetism that does this. And it's like, well, no, in actual therapies, it's, from what I can tell, it's the electrical current that's actually induced by a pulsating magnetic field. And so that means that these static magnets will never have any kind of beneficial, like, medical applications, because they don't do that.
yeah. So, wrapping that up, this was an absolutely great episode having you on. I love talking about some of these more physics heavy topics, just getting some variety in here. And this was a subject that has always kind of been on my mind to do a show for. So, when I met you at Better, I was like, this is my person to talk about this with. I was worried to do it on my own. I was like, I don't know if I'm capable of talking about magnets by myself. But I appreciate you doing this with me. And where can everybody find you on the internet once again?
Well, yeah. So pretty much, you can find me anywhere on social media except for the Nazi platforms. I'm Godless Engineer, and Facebook. If you happen to use Facebook, I don't know. Facebook's a little dodgy right now, but Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, again, a little dodgy, but any of those places you can find me. I'm just Godless Engineer. And I really appreciate you asking me on here. I don't normally get asked on to talk about physics things, and such. So I'm really happy to be able to flex those particular muscles. And I really appreciate being asked. And I was so happy to meet you at the Better Conference too. So I'm glad that we were able to connect in that way. And you need me any other time, I'm always here for you.
Yeah, I'm totally down to get you on for some other physics related myths. There are plenty of them out there. Maybe we even do a magnet therapy part two because there's plenty more to debunk here. In such
Yeah.
a We only had such a short amount of time with the hour and a half that I usually have. But that being said, some other announcements for this channel. Um, Next week we have our trivia night on Twitch at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. So most people here show up to my trivia, but that's always on the table for Fridays. And then I think this week it might be hosted by somebody else because I'm on night shift all week. So I'm figuring out who's going to host the trivia on their channel, but we're going to figure it out. We will still have trivia. I just may or may not be there depending on what we figure out for Friday. And then next Saturday, I'm still planning on having medical myths. I might do the show by myself because I still want to talk about functional medicine. But if something else comes up, because I am still interviewing, I'll let you all know if I decide to cancel next week. But I'm still planning on having it. So be here next week at the same time. And of course, I want to thank the lovely patrons. Thank you, Reggie, Kevin, Uncle Beck, Hannibal, Tons of Mice, Sadie Atkinson, and Jody L. Thank you for your support of the channel. And along with that, we have, after this episode, about 10 minutes after we stop going live, we're going to have the Patreon after show where we hang out and have a good time. So if you are a patron, you can find that link in the Discord, or you could find it on Patreon. So I hope to see all the patrons there in a little bit. But thank you, everybody, for joining us on this episode of Medical Myths, and we will see you all next time.